Welcome back to The Book Stop. I'm so excited to talk about today's episode. Fair warning moving forward, this podcast does contain spoilers as we go over major events within the novels. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on Apple, Spotify, and Instagram at The Book Stop Podcast. And welcome back to another episode of The Book Stop. Today I have my friend Nick joining us. Go ahead and say hi.
Hi.
And what book did you bring for us to talk about today?
So today we're going to be talking about J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring.
All right. Yeah, so this is actually the first time I've even thought about this book, to be honest. I'm really excited to kind of get into it. It's not exactly what I thought, so that's pretty interesting. To get us started, we're going to play a little game. So I'm going to have you summarize this book in 30 seconds. But twist, you have to do it in your best Gandalf impression.
Ooh, interesting. That's a good thing I practiced that. So 30-second summary of The Lord of the Rings.
Specifically Fellowship of the Ring, yeah.
Right. The final battle between men, elves, and orcs to push back the darkness culminated in a final victory, but that was only the beginning. Peace and a time of tranquility ushered onto the world, and the people did not see the darkness growing in the shadows. This is a journey of those living in that peace, key few, and this is a tale of their journey to push back the darkness that the rest of the world refuses to see until it is too late.
Yes, that's perfect. Yes, I love it. Great job. I love
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah, I'm just going to summarize it really quick for anybody that hasn't heard of the story yet or hasn't seen the movies and stuff. So, a young hobbit named Frodo Baggins inherits a magic ring from his elder Bilbo. Wise to the powers that the magic ring holds, the Dark Lord Sauron wants it, knowing it will enable him to enslave the people of Middle-earth. In his efforts to overthrow Sauron, Frodo recruits the fellowship of a wizard, an elf, a dwarf, and fellow hobbits on a mission to destroy the ring by casting it in the volcanic fires in Mount Doom. However, the ring unleashes its power as a result of the struggle. I guess to start us out, let's start with our favorite quotes. Do you want to share yours first, or I can go first?
Yeah, so my favorite quote is, honestly, it's quite near the beginning of the book, and I think it summarizes the whole of the story quite well. So Gandalf is speaking with Frodo, and he is elaborating to him the weight of essentially this journey. He's telling him, hey, this is what's going on, this is a heavy burden. And he's speaking of the evils and the corrupting power of the ring and why he believes that hobbits are the most useful candidates for this journey because they are not corrupted by greed and power in the way that the other races are. But as he's describing it to Frodo, Frodo says, I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had happened, as he's coming to terms with the weight of the ring. And Gandalf says to him, so, do all who live to see such times. No one wants to come to terms with these things. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. He's not telling Frodo, change the nature of the ring, but he's saying the best you can do is what you have with the time that's given to you. Mm-hmm. And that quote was honestly really instrumental to me in life and dealing with anxiety and struggles of, you can't change everything. But all you can do is spend your time wisely. So that's my favorite quote from the book.
Absolutely. That is actually one of my favorites too. But yeah, I agree with you say. It has to do with a lot of how fate is kind of thrusted upon us. Mm-hmm. And we don't really have a deciding factor into it. We just have to kind of deal with it and figure out how to make it work. So yeah, I really like that quote too. I brought another one just in case because I feel like that's a popular one because it's so well written and it really kind of develops the story around it.
I think it's such a solid quote just because of it does do a really well job of summarizing the book. A lot of it is characters thrown into situations and dealing with fate. And I think it's kind of one of J.R.R. Tolkien's big points was to encourage people, because a lot of his writings, and he did a lot of speaking during, World War I and afterwards, to try to encourage and build up people because they were living in a very dark time. And he took a lot of effort to spend times with, the veterans and families of World War I post, to encourage people and say, humanity and all of us have been through a very dark time, and we're getting thrown into situations that we can't control, but there is hope. There is a purpose. Take comfort in doing what you can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It seems like kind of like one of those hidden quotes that you have to really think about, drag out of the rest of the story and just think about. So yes, I believe that's a solid one. So I brought another quote. So this is when Gandalf is talking to Saruman. I am awful at names, so I'm definitely going to mess up. Gandalf is talking to Saruman towards the end of the book, and he says, "I liked white better." And Saruman says, "White," he sneered. "It serves as a beginning. White cloth may be dyed, the white pages can be overwritten, and the white light can be broken." And I know he's talking about himself and how white can be seen as innocence. Yeah. And how in this story, I think it really relates to Frodo, because he is a very innocent person. He is, even though he's quite old, he is quite young. And I feel like this story is really kind of a coming of age story for him, and how he is being brought out of that innocence because he's seeing all of this dangerous, evil stuff in the world. So I feel like that quote could kind of be seen through multiple characters in this story.
I think that's a really cool point, and I like that you brought up the fact that, yes, Frodo was old because of the time of the book, but yet he's still portrayed as almost a child, to depict the fact that the hobbits live very long lives comparatively to us, but yet even those at the end of life in the twilight, they're still, carefree. I'm just going to eat my food and have a smoke and chill with my family. Life's good. And so even at that point of age, he's still coming to terms with things. And I think that really puts it into perspective for us of upbringing and lifestyle aside. It's like, this man's 80 years old and he's still like, oh my gosh, as he's figuring out the world. And like you said, figuring out how evil some things are. It's a world shattering thing for him, but it really puts it into perspective for the reader of not only the differences of things in the world, but how someone who could live not only in comfort, but for so long, and then how that would shake and change them, and yet how they still rise and adapt to deal.
Yeah. So I think we both brought pretty awesome quotes, I will say. So we're going to actually just dive right into it. And the first thing I really want to talk about is writing style. So what I said earlier about it's not exactly what I thought, because this book always felt very, I guess, deep and big, and I was kind of scared to read it at points because I was I'm not really going to understand anything. I don't know the lore about it. I'm not a huge Lord of the Rings fan because I've seen the movies, but I've never really dove into the lore and the history behind everything. So I really enjoyed this book. I think the pacing was very good. I liked how everything was kind of broken up into these little chapters, and one thing I did notice is that almost every chapter, I would say at least 75% of the book, was every chapter started with Frodo woke up, and it ended with Frodo going to sleep or passing out. And so I think that kind of makes it feel more real, and it gives it pacing that feels more realistic.
I agree, and that was one of the things I really liked about Tolkien's writing style is, like you said, with Frodo, starting with him waking up and going to bed, it gives you a concrete measure of time, and I think that's something a lot of authors skip. A lot of authors, especially in movies, it's big thing will happen, fade to black, and then the next scene, and then they'll have a title scroll of 3 weeks later or whatever. And you're okay, I have a concept of the time here, but it doesn't feel genuine. It doesn't feel like I'm with this character through their waking hours, and then I see them rest, and then the adventure continues.
Yeah.
And I also really like his descriptions of things. Like, I think that's something that's lost is that vernacular of expressing to people, and sometimes it can seem almost tedious, but if you can do it artfully, the descriptions of landscapes, the fields, like the way the trees, reach up into the sky and glisten in the light, like that's something that is, I don't want to say lost, but maybe neglected in a lot of other media. And so just even that, like the walking scenes in the book, you just feel immersed. You can physically picture it without even having to focus the scenery in your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people want like fast pace. They want action, 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 dialogue. Like they just want to get the story going.
Yeah.
I think he did a good job in it, but I'm a type of person that kind of values having those descriptive things so I can visualize it.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate him taking the time to actually like build the world around these characters, and the world building in this story is it's crazy. Like,
yeah,
there's literally 4 maps in the beginning of this book.
Yeah, the world building of the book is incredible. I mean, he created an entire language in depth with vowels, verbs, and everything for this world. And so, the scale is crazy. Like, he mapped out the distance between the lands to the foot. Like, he created languages for each of the races. Like, it's insane how much he did in, world building.
It's crazy. I didn't think there was this much into it. Like, obviously, I knew that there was the lore within each, society of elves, dwarfs, hobbits. Like, obviously, they have to have their own drive in the way that their society was built. Yeah. But I didn't think there was so much planned out. And even in just the first book, this is a trilogy, correct?
Yeah. So you have the trilogy, which is the Fellowship, Two Towers, Return of the King, which is the journey of Frodo and essentially the Fellowship. You've got The Hobbit, which is kind of a prequel to the trilogy in a way, but it's the story of Bilbo, who is Frodo's adopted uncle. But then you have the Silmarillion, which is essentially the origin story of the world. It's, like if you were to look at like religious texts, it'd be like the Genesis of the Lord of the Rings world. It talks about, the gods and like the angels, and then how Middle-earth came to be. And then that's a compilation of all the stories before Bilbo's time and then before The Lord of the Rings.
Gotcha. I can definitely see the draw of it now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can see why so many people dedicate so much time and everything to learning about this world. So I can definitely understand now that I've read the book. To go back to, like, his writing style, I noticed that a lot of it is written in poems, riddles, songs, cheers, rants, like stuff like that. So it kind of, again, brings in that lore from the backstory of the whole being of Middle-earth. And at first, I didn't like it because I just personally don't like poems. I don't know why. Yeah. I just have a vendetta against them. And I just hate them. But now that I actually like paid attention to them, I can understand why. It kind of gives it like this creepier vibe to it. I liked it.
No, I'm totally tracking with you. When I first read it, I mean, The Fellowship of the Ring was one of the first books I ever remember reading out of obligation. Like, I read Treasure Island and then The Lord of the Rings because, I was 8 years old and I wanted to see the movies in theaters, but my parents were like, oh no, it's too violent. I'm like, I'm going to read that and you can't stop me. And then like I developed a love for reading and literary works. I hated poems. I was 8. I was a boy. I was like, oh, arts and emotion and things like that. Oh, that's gross. But as I stepped back and I thought about it, and I'm like, he's written this world full of beauty, adventure, excitement, and yet he's throwing poems in here. What the heck do these mean? But I took a step back and I looked at them, and a lot of the times, like, the poems were, like, of the elves. And so it gave me a perspective on the elves of their high emphasis on beauty, grace, refinery. They are long-living, they are undying, they are basically art in person. And so, like, it helped me understand them and how he saw them, and I was like, oh, when applied with art and passion, it shows a grace and a magnificence, and it's just a beauty. And so it does give you more understanding of what's important to those characters.
Yeah, it definitely adds to it. It does require intelligence to make a poem because you got to have things rhyming. So
Right.
So let's jump into like the plot of this story. There are some rings, some little jewelry that this guy is trying to get. And I want to say, so there's 9 rings and 1 ring to rule them all.
There are multiple rings given to each race. So Sauron was essentially the gift giver. He was kind of Tolkien's depiction of the devil in a lot of ways. And he started out as beautiful, magnificent, this wise friend from far away that came to all the leaders of each races and said, I'm going to give you these rings. They're going to make you powerful. They're going to make you wise. They're going to do all these things. But as he was designing them, he enchanted his ring to control them, to corrupt them, but subtly. He never, reached into their mind to say, hey, you go kill those people because I don't like them. But he would degrade their morals and tear them down. So he gave 9 to the leaders of men. So he took kings from all the countries in the world and gave each of them 9 rings. He gave 7 to the dwarf lords. And the dwarves, interestingly enough, ended up not becoming corrupted by the rings themselves because they were too stubborn. But it instilled in them a passion for monetary gain, and that ended up being their fall. So that wasn't a fault of Sauron, but it still ended up corrupting them. He gave 3 to the lords of the elves, and then he created the 1 for himself.
Happy that you explained that. Because even though I was reading it, I still was like kind of confused a little bit on the history of the rings. And I'm sure it's probably explained even more in depth with the other books. But this book is obviously, we got, the good versus evil. We have the quest adventure section of the story. And I really liked how it starts. We have this big birthday scene. So Bilbo is the carrier of that one powerful ring right now. And I believe correct me if I'm wrong, so he got it from Smeagol. Yes, and so he's been holding on to it for a while, and Frodo inherits it from Bilbo.
He was using it occasionally for his own benefit, and then Gandalf called him out on it. He's like, dude, this thing is evil. Bilbo's like, you know what? I'm sick of people. I've been using this ring to avoid people. I'm just going to give it to Frodo. I'm just going to peace out and live in Rivendell with the elves. And Gandalf goes, that's perfect. That's what I want. I'm going to use Frodo to get rid of this. You go heal and retire in a life of bliss. Perfect.
I just really like the beginning of how it's this whole fireworks scene and like how great it is. It's all happy and fun. And then as your story goes, you see how dark it gets.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of like shows a balance of the book itself being good versus evil. Like it starts out really good and then it kind of like convinces you to follow the story. And then it leads to the evil parts.
Yeah.
So like how you said just a second ago about how each of the rings provide a power to where like it makes them powerful and stuff. But each one has also a weakness that comes with it. When they get these rings and they become powerful, and it's a big battle of wanting to be more powerful than the other, but them themselves become slaves to the rings.
Yeah, absolutely.
They are kind of, I don't know, they're kind of under like a trance of, I feel like that's what addiction to power is though, is being driven to be this big, successful, strong immortality, like all that stuff that draws you to it. But in the end, you're kind of like sucked into this like void and you can't really leave. Isn't Smeagol like addicted and wants to get it back?
Yeah, so Smeagol is interesting in that, he's the only hobbit to ever be corrupted by the ring. Like, it talks about elves and, men especially, being corrupted by the ring, but he's the only hobbit that was corrupted by it. And part of that was his connection to it. The first time he actually was able to take possession of the ring, he committed an act of murder to achieve the ring. So his first thought, to get the ring was just kill, death, and whatever it takes to get this. So he was like immediately corrupted. Whereas everyone else who's dealt with it was like a slow build. But yeah, so the power of it alone kept him alive, and his mind kept decaying, but his physical body kept going on just because of the power of the ring, because it corrupted him, because it was seeking for something greater, and it used him as a vessel to get him there.
And that kind of brings me into our first discussion is favorite relationships. I went with the rings and their influence over the world and each individual character.
Wow, that makes me almost feel a little bad for mine. That's pretty deep. I like that.
Thanks. But like we just said, how the rings are so powerful. They are this like compelling thing to be gained, but at the same time, a lot of people avoid it. I think it's a good balance. The rings themselves are just a good symbol of good versus evil.
Yeah.
If you're compelled to this ring, you're kind of evil. Like, if you want this power, then you're kind of somebody that probably is very selfish and you don't really want to be around.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a good, I mean, you know, a ring is a literal picture of a circle. It's, like you said, seeking power or already corrupted, you're going to end up at the same point. But at the same time, even good intentions can still follow that same cycle if they're not done through wisdom, and how even that can be corrupted.
I think that was a good way to kind of tell the story. But who did you bring for your favorite relationship?
So, my favorite relationship was hard, especially for the Fellowship of the Ring, because, I mean, you've got kind of the full cast. I really like the lightheartedness of, you know, the Hobbits and Merry and Pippin. Honestly, I think my favorite relationship, I'd probably say, is Gimli and Legolas. Okay. Because they start out, like, hating each other. They have this deep-rooted thing of, like, I'm an elf and I'm like high and superior and I'm graceful and free-flowing and intelligent. And the dwarves are like, I'm underground, I'm working until I die. Like, my whole identity is in I will fight the mountains to make something happen. And the elves are like, you know, sipping tea and eating like leaves and stuff like that. They're all like, oh, I'm better than you because I'm peaceful. And you've got these two characters that are thrown into all of these hardships. Like, you know, friends dying and leaving and traveling the world and fighting insurmountable odds. And they just hate each other because who they were born as. But as the series goes on, they start to understand that there is value in them. There is value in friendship. There's a value in that bond above what you were born into. And so I think that's like an awesome thing that like Tolkien added to the book, because it's like, it shows people, doesn't matter who you are, what your ancestors were, where you came from. Those have importance, but what really builds bonds and builds connections is what you do. And so you can take pride in where you came from, but you're going to miss out if you let that make you negative, when instead you could have these opportunities for friendship and these close-knit connections if you approach someone, if you try to understand them. And, you know, in their case, struggle through things. And I just think that's a beautiful picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely support that. So I like how we have different characters with different backgrounds. I'm glad that it's not all hobbits or all elves. I like that they're all joining forces to get rid of this one evil in the world that needs to be destroyed. So I think that was really good.
Thank you.
So to kind of like go back to the Fellowship, I want to talk about, I call them the ride or die. So we have Frodo, who is, you know, inherits this ring from his uncle, and Gandalf sends him on this quest to destroy the ring in Mount Doom. And then we have his ride or die crew. We have Sam.
I love that.
Who is, he's the gardener.
Yeah.
And I consider him his best friend.
Absolutely. I mean, moral of the story is gardening is badass. I mean.
That is very true. I consider Sam being the driver of this ride or die group, because I feel like he'll do anything for Frodo.
Absolutely.
We have Merry and Pippin, who are also from Bag's End.
They are from the Shire.
Oh, the Shire, yeah.
Frodo's house is called Bag End. It's the home of the Baggins. It's kind of like this is where they start and this is where they end. So it's Baggins End or Bag End.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I found that some of the locations were kind of hard to keep up with.
Yes, absolutely. Here's where everyone's from, and I'm gonna just say it one time. Yeah.
But yeah, so we have them, and then we have Aragon, who he found them at that little, it was like a little pub area,
Yeah,
right?
the Prancing Pony in Brandybog? Brooklyn? Anyways, yeah, the Prancing Pony. Ponies have a fairly high significance in the story of, you just frankly have a lot of little people between the dwarves and the hobbits, and so ponies are utilized quite a bit in this story.
So I want to talk about ponies for a second. Every single time they said the hobbits mounted their ponies, I lost it. I kept laughing because I was like, that's such a funny visual, because I always forget how small they are.
Right.
Especially with reading the book. When you see the movie, it's a little bit easier because you can actually physically see them. But with them in this book, you forget that they're not an average sized man. They are like really small. And so they consider ponies to be like horse size. So every time they said mounted his pony, I was laughing.
I love that. I love that because I agree 100%, because my first introduction to the Lord of the Rings was the books. So hearing him describe that, I was just like, man, just imagining this like little dude. Of course, I was 8, so I was probably about that size anyways. And so there was a part of me that was like, yeah, horses are big and scary. That makes sense. I'd take a pony. I was like, I feel kinship to them. Like, I get that.
Yeah. I'm sorry, sidetrack. So let's go back to, so we have Aragorn, and then we have Legolas that joins the crew, Gimli that joins up, and who am I missing? Gandalf, obviously.
Gandalf, and then Boromir.
Doesn't he turn on them at the end? Or was that the other guy?
So he does towards the middle. No, actually, I guess it would be more towards the end. It's right before the book ends.
And he turns on them because of this, like, draw to the ring. So, yeah, I kind of liked how they kind of included that. Even within this little fellowship, there is going to be people that are compelled to take it from them. And that it's hard to trust people in this kind of society. So
it is interesting how they talk about like characters, like even within the fellowship of like the best of everyone, there are people who are corrupted. Even Aragorn, before Boromir's death, Frodo comes to him, they're about to be attacked by all these orcs, and he goes, here, Aragorn, take this ring. Like, you're stronger, you're better, you're wiser than me. You can handle it. And he reaches out his hand and he looks at it and he considers it for a second. And then he closes Frodo's hand and goes, this is your burden to bear. You are the one who was chosen to handle this. But I will carry you and I will help you achieve it. But I will not take this. I'm not strong enough. Yeah. And, like, that was, like, such a cool moment because, like, Frodo realized, like, it wasn't just fate that just said, here, go do this. Everyone else believed in him and saw that he could do it. He was like, you know what? I'm encouraged. I feel like this is mine, but I don't want anyone to get hurt. So he left the group. And then, like, you get to see Sam, like you said, like, leader of the Ride or Die crew, like, charge after him into the water. Never swam before, couldn't swim, but he's like, what, F it. That's my man. I'm going to support him and help him achieve this goal. And just started walking out. No thought of himself, no thought of danger, just, I believe, and I'm going.
Absolutely. And that draws me to the next scene. Favorite character would definitely have to be Sam. I see him as a little puppy. He's like, he's very loyal, he is dependable, and I like that he, no matter what, like you just said, like how he's afraid of swimming and doesn't know how to swim, but he's willing to sacrifice to go to be with Frodo at the end because he knows that this is such a big burden and that it shouldn't just be on Frodo.
Right.
A good scene to show that he cares about him and that he's willing to go forward in this adventure with him.
Yeah.
I would say Sam is definitely my favorite character.
And fun fact about that, actually in the movie, in the scene where he chases after Elijah Wood, or Frodo in the boat, the actor who plays Sam, like, stepped on a shard of glass that completely went through his foot, and he still carried on with the scene. Like, he still kept trying to go after Frodo. And it was just like one of those like crazy things where it's like, this man's like, just his foot almost was cut in half and he just kept going.
Oh my gosh, that makes my heart sing. That's so cute.
Yeah, like, it's crazy. Like, the actors in that movie, like, embodied the spirit of their characters so well.
Like, we don't normally talk about the movies, but for a sec, I do want to go in them. I think the casting was very well done in this. So I came from watching the movie first to reading the book. And, like, I'm sure a lot of people don't like the adaptation, but I think they did a pretty good job. I think that they got what they needed, because obviously this is such a big, meaty book. There's a lot in it. And I think they got what they needed to be able to tell the story.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I mean, I've read through each of the books at least a dozen times, and there are certain things where I'm like, oh, that would have been cool if they added that to the movie. Like, you know, Tom Bombadil would have been so fun to see. But at the same time, I take a step back and I look at them and I go, man, these are like 3 hours long, unextended. There are so many books where they blow them into 3 or 4 movies, and you're like, oh, that's too much. Whereas The Lord of the Rings, like, honestly, if you get down to brass tacks, everyone's upset because it's like, I wish there was more. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's a fault of, you know, Peter Jackson or the movies. It's just they didn't have time to explain or go through everything.
Mm-hmm. And that's why we have the books, so they can go through everything.
Oh, yeah.
So who is your favorite character?
So, my favorite character, honestly, is probably Boromir.
Okay. Why?
Because I like that, like you were talking about earlier, and you had mentioned before, and I was like, oh, I gotta bring him up, but I was like, no, I gotta save him. Because he was the one that was corrupted by the ring. And I know a lot of people, you know, again, not to go too heavily off the movies, who hated Boromir because he was the one guy that was like, oh, I have to take the ring. And like, he was like almost willing to kill Frodo for it. And that's, you know, portrayed in the book. But at the same time, he realizes, because his goal to take the ring was not for his own power. It's not because he wanted to be famous. He was the captain of Osgiliath, like the outer city protecting Gondor, right on the border of like Mordor. Like, he was facing literally like tsunamis and tidal waves of orcs daily, and he was praised as the champion of men. He was in line to be the king of the biggest country in the world, and he gave all of that up to try to get this ring destroyed and, like, you know, doom Sauron. But he got into his mind that he could use this power to defeat Sauron. And so it shows that it's not even selfish ambition, but it's reckless action. It's seeking power from bad sources. You know, it's kind of like the ends justify the means kind of actions. And it shows that that's not always the route. And he realizes that in this conversation of Frodo, of him trying to aggressively, like, take it from him and tackling him to the ground. And he sees, he's like, wait a minute, what I'm doing is not right. Like, Frodo is the one to handle this, and it is not my job to step in and deal with it. Like, even though my motives are good to stop Sauron, my actions to get there are not just. And so he ends his life protecting Merry and Pippin from the swarm of Uruk-hai, and he talks to Aragorn, and, you know, their last dialogue of, you were my friend, my brother, and my king, and then he dies. It's him totally coming to terms with his place in the world and realizing he can't save everybody and he can't fix everyone, but he can support the people who are supposed to. So, I love him to pieces. Also a big fan of Sean Bean, even though he dies every time.
I know.
I love his character when you dig into him. You can see him as is and write him off and say, he was an almost bad guy. But even in him, there's so much depth to his character. So he's my favorite. You
know what? I have a newfound respect for this man now that you said this, because I didn't really think about that. So yeah. I respect him now. So I've heard a lot of people say that they kind of compare this book to Harry Potter. And now that I've read both of them, I kind of can understand why. Because we have that call of adventure, we have that good versus evil, we have Dementors for some reason. Because those, like...
The ring wraiths, yeah.
Yeah, they really reminded me of Dementors. We have old wizard that sounds about the same. Like, this younger, I mean, Frodo isn't young, but he has this innocence about him.
Yeah. Like, for his people, I mean, he is the equivalent of, like, someone in their, at most late teens, early 20s, so he's still young.
Mm-hmm. So I can see the way that people, I'm probably going to get a lot of heat for this, because I know a lot of people probably don't see that, but looking at it from, like, a literature vibe, I can understand the similarities, and I can see why these are kind of, like, almost like branches of the same tree. They're not necessarily the same thing, but
Yeah.
I can see how if you like one, then you're probably going to like the other. So I just wanted to bring that up, see what your thoughts are on it, if you agree, disagree.
I'll be honest, I've gotten heated in the past because, like, I've had people compare it and they're like, oh yeah, Harry Potter's like a better version of Lord of the Rings. I'm like, you son of a... No, Lord of the Rings came out first, and it's this broad scale, like, it deals with people in, like, all aspects of life. Mm-hmm. And then I took a step back and I was like, well, you know what? Harry Potter is more specific in that it deals with specifically a young boy, and like you said, the balance of good versus evil, but it's much more tailored to, young people, of being an unwanted child in a home where you're not loved or supported, and just feeling like an outcast, and as he is able to be reaffirmed by friendship and grow stronger in his journey. And by the time I had read the books, I was already an adult, and so I was like, I don't quite get this the same way, but I have that relationship to Lord of the Rings because to me it feels more all-encompassing, and so I feel like it's deeper, but at the same time, I don't want to minimize that effect that Harry Potter had to certain other people, where it's like it hit the nail right on the head. You've got a sledgehammer, and you've got, like, a little, like, a watchmaker's hammer. You hit two different things with it. The sledgehammer hits a whole bunch of things. The watchmaker's hammer hits a little thing. Doesn't hit the spot for me, but that doesn't take away from the effect that it just hit right with someone perfectly to make that story have, like, meaning and, like, lessons and all these good things that, like, just clings to other people. So I think Lord of the Rings is better, but at the same time, I don't want to take that away from someone else and say, this isn't better than your thing. They're just different. But they do have a lot of similar tones.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely not saying, like, either one of them is better.
Yeah.
I think they both tell a very good story, and I just think that they're kind of like hand in hand. If you read one, you're really going to like the other. Right. One obviously is going to take precedence over the other one, but yeah, I don't honestly know which one I like more. I think they're kind of both. To be honest, I never finished the Harry Potter series, so I probably would feel better towards that because I just knew that one more. I watched the movies more, but now that I've read this book, I definitely want to read the rest of them, and I want to learn more about these characters and stuff. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up, and because I know that's a heated topic in the community. So
yeah, and at the end of the day, they're both underdogs that have everything against them. Frodo and Harry Potter. But at the end of the day, through friendship and support of a group, they're able to achieve great things.
Yeah, we're going to play a little game. I have a list of characters for you, and you are just going to tell me their age. Just try to get as close as you can. So let's get started. First up, we have Pippin.
I'm going to say Pippin 70?
70, all right. He's actually only 29.
Holy crap. Okay.
He's like a baby.
He's a baby. Oh, that makes sense, but man, okay.
Yeah. So we have Frodo. So they said his age at the beginning of the book. So I'm going off of, like, beginning stuff, not, like, whole series.
I want to say the whole series took place over the course of, like, a year or two. So at the beginning of the book, I want to say between 70 and 80, but I think he might have been early 80s.
Early 80s? Okay. He's actually closer to 70s.
Dang.
So
okay.
He was between 50 and 60-ish. Like right in there. So next we have Gollum.
Oh, Gollum. Let's see. Gollum's got to be like 400 or 500 years old.
So you say about 4 or 5?
Yeah.
All right. He is, for some reason, it gave me an exact age. He's 589 years old.
Okay, no, that would make sense. Cause, oh, yeah, that's right. It was about 500 years that the ring corrupted him.
Mm-hmm.
And so he would have been about 80, 89 when... Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Close, 500,
You're close, yeah.
I'll take that one as a win.
Next we have Arwen. So Arwen was...
Oh, goodness. Yeah, Elrond's daughter.
Elrond's, yeah. And he was Strider, or she was Strider's, like, beloved.
Yeah, he ends up being big in love with her.
So what do we think for her? So she is an elf.
Yes.
And they last a long time.
Yeah, so they're essentially immortal unless they get, stabbed to death.
That would be one reason you wouldn't be immortal.
Right, yeah, once you start cutting stuff up. But yeah, Elrond's like 4,000 years old. So I'm going to say like 800 years old, if memory serves.
Way more.
Oh, dang, really? 2,000? I'm spitballing on her because, man, yeah, I always just like, oh yeah, elves, they're like X amount of years old. Yeah, that makes sense. And I just move on.
So Arwen is 2,901.
Wow, not even close.
And she's young. That's young.
Yeah.
So that's crazy.
Well, yeah, because like Galadriel, she's like freaking like 6,000 or 7,000 years old.
Yeah, I could imagine.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, I don't know if I'd want to be here that long.
I'm at 26 and I'm already halfway done. Like, I'm good.
That's right.
And to finish it off, we have Gandalf.
Oh, man. I don't think that Gandalf actually had an age given, because he was, long story short, Iluvatar, or, god of the Lord of the Rings, essentially sent the wizards to the world to guide the realms of men. And so, I mean, they showed up right around when men showed up. So Gandalf's got to be, I'm going to say like 4,500 years old.
Okay. So Gandalf is essentially like a spirit, like you said.
Yeah.
And he takes the body. So I'm going off of like his body age, because his spirit is bajillion years old. I don't know. So
exactly.
Gandalf himself, his body age is unknown, but they said it's about 11,000 years old. Just in Gandalf the Grey's bodysuit.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, yeah.
But yeah, good job. Yay, you did it.
I got one. Woo, kind of.
It's hard. They don't really explain it. They don't really go into detail about their age. So I think for guesses, I think those are pretty solid.
Thank you.
All right, and we're kind of drawing into a close here. I do want to kind of go over, is there any like missed opportunities, anything that you personally would have done different, wanted to see differently in this story?
I think, honestly, like, I mean, you get a little bit of it with, like, Aragon and Arwen, like, kind of like the relationship. There was part of me that kind of wanted, like, a little more romance to the book. But, over time, I had realized, like, Tolkien had kind of hit on that. And he just told a reporter when interviewed on the book, like, they were like, hey, why isn't there romance in your book? Like, why isn't there more relationships? And, he's kind of famously quoted as just saying, like, are you kidding me? The world's ending. Like, everyone's dying. The stake of the world is at place. Who's thinking about, does she think I'm cute?
Right.
And so, like, that's one of those things where I'm like, that could have added some more depth to it. But at the same time, like, I get why he made that decision. And for me, it's like, that could have been interesting, but I get it. So that's one of the things that seems like it's kind of missing a little bit, but it makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like it would kind of be almost like forced in a way if he would have added it.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm pulling from like Avatar: The Last Airbender and how Katara and Aang kind of have like a relationship towards the end. And there was some scenes where it does kind of feel forced and got in the way of like what actually mattered was like the storytelling of the world is gonna end or stuff like that. So I feel like it could have gotten in the way. So I'm kind of glad that he didn't put it in. But
yeah, at
the same time, I like the side Arwen and Aragon.
With Aragon,
yeah. So the only thing I said, I wish there was a little bit more like pushback from the enemy, because we had those Dementor looking things.
Yeah, the ring wraiths.
Yeah, the ring wraiths. We had those, and we had the orcs in a few scenes, but maybe a little bit more push. I'm sure we get it later on, too.
Oh, yeah.
But I feel like in the beginning, it kind of prolonged some of the stuff. You don't really see the drive that much. Because you're like, right. I don't really see the evil in the world. I don't really know why they're going forth with this adventure. But later, towards the end, and in the other books, I'm sure you'll see it drawn out more.
Yeah, so the first book really, I hate to say it because it is good, but honestly, it's kind of just a prologue for the rest of the story. Because I agree, like, the enemy, the orcs, the whole evil of the world, even as you get into it, you're like, wow, this is like a big thing for these characters, but how is this world encompassing? And it really is just setting the stage for the things to come. Like, there's a lot more gravity and weight in the further stories, but at the same time, I think Tolkien really wanted to take a step to really build up to it, but also show you where these characters are at. Like you were saying, it feels kind of small, but to these characters, it's a big thing. But as they grow, the stakes also grow with them.
Yeah. And then the other thing I was going to say was, I found the languages and the deep lore to be kind of confusing in this first one. Like, I know they're obviously setting it up, but a lot of time I was like, I don't know what any of this means. I don't know what they're saying. And, like, I found it a little distracting. So maybe, like, a little bit more explaining would be great. But like I said, I haven't read any of the other ones, so I'm sure they do that.
Yeah, so they definitely do. Like, if you read the Silmarillion, The Hobbit, and then The Lord of the Rings, it makes a lot more sense. But for Tolkien, he tried to kind of do two things of write a story and, you know, hit a lot of points and have it, like, as a broad scale, but a lot of it was just a passion project for him. And the thing that really inspired him was, you know, he was an Englishman, and he was like, England's mythology sucks. We've got King Arthur, we've got Robin Hood, we've got... that's about it. You know, when you've got Greece that has, like, this very rich mythology, so he went about to write The Lord of the Rings and a mythology standpoint of, this is what happened before, you know, we came there. Like, this is this way the world worked, and then basically wrote a mythology as if that's what happened. And so he created all these languages and all these other things that aren't in the story of The Lord of the Rings, or there's little pieces, but they aren't totally what drives the story. So it does kind of make you feel a little out of the loop if you go through just the book, you know, the Fellowship.
Yeah, so, like, I just need to dive more into it, and I definitely will. I think I already have the second one lined up for a podcast in the future, so I'm excited to get into it. So yeah, we're kind of drawing to a close here. We do a little rating scale here on the Book Stop, and we kind of make up our own thing. You want me to swing first?
Yeah, if you don't want to mind hitting it first, I'd say go for it.
So I would give Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, 6 Dementors in the Wrong Book out of 10. So I really like this story. I like the way that he wrote it, his writing style. It just needs to be a little bit more explained. Like, the lore itself just needs to be a little bit more explained. And yeah, so that's why I give it that rating. How about you?
I like your rating style. I'd say I'd give it 9 Rings of Men out of 10.
All right, yeah.
And I agree. It does feel... It gives you enough of a hook that you're like, I'm invested, but it does leave you with a lot of questions, and that can split you two ways. Either you go, I don't know what's going on, so I'm out, or it can give you a hunger for, I want to figure this out. And he does give you the means to do it, but you gotta find them. And the Silmarillion, for a very long time, was very hard to get a hold of. But then, you know, Tolkien's son, you know, went on and published it, and then it became more accessible. But you don't know about it unless you look for it.
Yeah, I had no idea that was a thing, so...
I would happily give you a copy next time I see you. It is my favorite book of all time.
Oh my gosh.
Like, the Silmarillion, 12 out of 10. Like, oh, I love it.
So good. We'll have to... Maybe that'll be our next podcast. I'm sure you'll be back on in the future. We'll bring that back.
I'd be hyped.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was an excellent talk. I think we dove into a lot of stuff, but we really barely scraped the surface. So, if you guys for some reason haven't even seen the movie, I would recommend at least doing that and then reading the book or read the book, whatever you want to do. Definitely dive into this story. It's such a great story, and thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
Thank you. And yeah, we'll see you in the future. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you for turning the pages with us this week. If you've enjoyed this episode, show your support on social media. Don't forget to turn on your notifications to get a reminder of the next episode. Thanks again for listening to The Book Stop. Bye!